So I am currently out of town, and as you can see, I'm recording the video outside. I'm in Colorado Springs, Colorado, and basically I'm out of town for a wedding. I'm not shooting the wedding. It's my brother-in-law's wedding, so the whole family's here in Colorado Springs, but I still need to get, podcast out. And so I figured I haven't had a guest on, and this is a great opportunity to have a guest on. So if you don't know, or if this is the first time you've listened, I'm a photographer based in San Antonio, Texas. I specialize with high school senior and dance photography, and that's pretty much my main thing. The podcast is pretty much all photography based, and today is going to be no different, even though my guest here is not a photographer, has no desire to be a photographer, and I have basically kind of willingly or unwillingly brought her along on this photography adventure. But kind of what I thought about talking about in this episode was what it's like from her perspective or from your spouse's perspective. This thing for me was like a side hustle. And again, I kind of brought her along. This is my wife, Rachel. Rachel, feel free to go ahead and introduce yourself if you want to.
Hi, my name is Rachel Carmody. Jason and I have been married 27 years. We actually just celebrated our anniversary last week. I am not a photographer, I'm not creative, I'm not an artist. That's definitely Jason. I'm business, numbers, analytical, think of a plan, follow it to the T all the way through. So we are definitely yin and yang in pretty much everything we do. So I'm excited to be here today and I guess show the behind the scenes.
Right, the behind the scenes. Rachel's fantastic. Of course, we've been married 27 years. I don't think you have a relationship that lasts 27 years without it being fantastic. But, pluses and minuses, goods and bads, hard times, good times. And so really this just, again, is kind of a way for me to let you peek in the door, not necessarily at my relationship, but also get a peek in the door at what it's like on your perspective. Maybe you don't fully understand. Maybe you don't fully see. I guarantee you, I don't ever fully understand this woman. She, she thinks at a different level than me. And so I think and even today, listening to the answers that she's going to provide, which I don't know the answers, she's seen the questions. But even today, that doesn't necessarily mean that I'm going to do everything that she suggests or she says, because it's just, we're just a little bit different. And I think that's a good thing. And I think it's important that you have those differences. There's that good give and pull, give and take, right? And so I think Rachel and I do have that. We are not the end all be all. We're not experts at this, but I just wanted her perspective on things. So with that said, basically I'm going to ask a few questions. Rachel's going to give her answers, and you take from it what you will. Let's roll. You ready?
Ready.
All right. So I started taking pictures with like a little point and shoot camera of my Ford Mustang back, 2005, 2006. Never did I realize that or think that I would be a photographer, a portrait photographer. And I remember I was deployed in Afghanistan talking with a photographer friend, and I decided right then and there, I'm going to be a photographer. And so I reached out to you and said, hey, I want to buy a camera. I'm going to be a photographer. What were your thoughts on that? Did you support the idea? Because a little bit of background, I have a lot of side hustles, or I used to have a lot of side hustles. What were your kind of initial thoughts and support and just your take?
So it probably didn't register with me as much as it does with you looking back on it, because you've always had hobbies. Sometimes they're sports, sometimes they're fixing computers or phones or, photography. So I just assumed it was a hobby. And, when you wanted to do paintball, you spent $1,000 and a week later, you're no longer interested in paintball. So I don't think it was like me thinking, oh, you're going to spend all this money and then you're going to be super successful. I think it was just like, oh, this is your hobby now, you enjoy it, and next week or next month or next year, you'll have a different hobby. I don't think I was seeing a long-term picture.
Yeah, I definitely didn't see a long-term picture either. I just thought it was cool, and I kind of flew by my seat of the pants at that point, I think, in my life, more so maybe than now. And it was something that I wanted to do, and so
I think the same week that you told me you wanted a camera equipment and you were going to become a photographer, you also told me you needed a new Keurig machine in the war in Afghanistan because you plugged yours into the wrong outlet. So I think it was along the same lines of I got to buy a camera and a Keurig machine.
Yeah, that sounds about right. That sounds about right. Yeah, I've definitely, yeah. So she mentioned like some of the little things. Again, I've mentioned probably before that I fixed computers and stuff like that. And so this probably was more just a like, all right, this is just something new that Jason wants to get involved in. And I do love that. You know, even then, we didn't fully have the money to be able to buy that
We
kind of
had
stuff.
no money to buy that kind of stuff.
And it's not like I bought an expensive camera. I bought a pretty cheap Amazon camera or Canon kit. It was probably $700 or $800, but it was also $700 or $800 that I didn't fully have. So that support, even then, for a fun, silly hobby at that point, was pretty awesome. And so, you know, it's great to have support like that. Even if she didn't fully know what she was getting into, I didn't. But you know, it's really cool to have that kind of support. So thank you for that. So I've already given Rachel behind the scenes directions. She can't attack me in this. I mentioned in my critique video a few weeks ago, or critique podcast, that I don't take critique very well. So I told her she has to just butter me up to everybody and make sure that everybody knows I'm the best there ever has been at being whatever it is.
I don't know if that's my strong suit.
That isn't her strong suit. I do want to keep it on the positive side, so we are going to try to keep it a little bit positive. But I have always struggled with Rachel giving me critique. I don't know what it is. Maybe it's that spouse relationship, but so who knows? I might not like the answers that I hear, but I'm going to embrace them.
This may not see the light of day.
Yeah, you might not ever see this. You might not ever see this. First off, again, as a photographer, I kind of look at my business hours as like a real estate business hours, you know, a salesman. You got to work basically when the people can work, right? When your clients can work. And so Rachel puts in a good amount of hours, 10 to 12 hours a day at her job. And the sad part about that is, you know, when she's coming home, I'm heading out the door. And so we kind of see each other in passing sometimes, especially those busy periods. So that can be a little stressful. That can be a little bit aggravating. What would be like an aggravating, either one of your most aggravating things about living with a photographer, or a couple quick aggravations that you have with living with a photographer?
I don't think I have aggravations with it. I think it's evolved over the last 5 years, because when Jason first really started to getting into photography, I was going to school full time to get my master's, and our daughter had just gone away to college. So we were in a huge transition in life, and it was 2019. So I was working, like Jason said, 10 to 12 hours a day, and I was also going to school 3 or 4 hours every night. So I was very busy, and Jason was pretty much gearing to my every need. Like, I wouldn't have eaten dinner if he hadn't brought it to me, or breakfast or lunch. And then COVID hit, and I was working from home, but just as many hours, and my school went to online. And so Jason's photography business was taking off at the same time, but I was very focused on something else. So when I graduated 2 years later, I remember you being scared that I had, you know, hours in the evening that I would want to spend time with you. And I think we just got into a nice groove because it was COVID. I was actually taking lunch and we were taking walks. So we were kind of eating our dinner at lunchtime and getting our time together then. And then you would go in the evening and do your photo shoots. And, you know, now I'm back in the office more, and we're not seeing each other as often. But you've made decisions, like you don't shoot Sunday morning. We always go to church or watch church online, and you know, you try to make sure we go out to eat, or you know, take walks. And I think you put effort and time in it on the small scale during the week. The last couple of years, I only want to go on vacation, like probably only have a job so I can afford vacations. And Jason really doesn't want to take time off work to go on vacation. And the last couple of years, he's put effort into taking time off to go on vacation. And I think those have been huge for us. So I do think the most irritating part is when I say, hey, in 6 months, can you block your calendar so we can go on this vacation? And he says, no, because I want to leave it open in case somebody wants to book with me. And I'm like, I want to book with you. So I think when we first, like a year or so ago, and I was really frustrated about it, and I would be like, well, how much will it cost you to not do a a photo shoot that weekend? Because I'll give you that amount of money if you would just take a break. And once we did like 1 or 2 vacations, and you were like, this is a recharge, this is refreshing, and now you're doing it more often.
Yeah, it is very difficult, and I've mentioned it before in the podcast. It's very difficult for me to step back and take that time off, and I think it's very unwarranted, but I feel like I'm going to get lazy right away if I take any time off. And Rachel, is her job, and I don't want this to come out wrong, but her job is very much more mentally stimulating than I think photography is, and so she needs that break and she needs that time off. And it's a struggle for me because I'm like, I'm going to lose clients if I don't do that. And what I've really had to realize is if they want to work with me, they're going to work with me. And I don't need to cut my life in hopes of, right? And so I think that's very important. And I still struggle with it. And once we leave this trip, I'm still going to struggle with it. So that's something that I'm constantly working on.
Yeah. I think you used to answer your client no matter what time of day they called, no matter what you were doing. I mean, we could be eating dinner, having a conversation at church, and you're answering them and you're saying, well, they need me to respond right away. But, they know you have a life, and if you're taking a shower, you're not going to get out of the shower and answer your phone. And I think that was hard for you to see that concept that it's okay to reply back in an hour. You don't have to reply back that second. Yeah. And that helped a lot when you started like being in the moment with me instead of me just kind of being an afterthought. I don't like that one. Don't say that.
I actually do like it.
Oh.
I actually do like it.
Okay.
So I'm going to leave that in, even though she said
I didn't mean it to be negative, because it wasn't like you're ignoring me, but it could feel lonely or ignored if at any random moment a client may, contact.
Rachel has told me before, and I think it's valuable for any relationship, that she cannot compete with a phone. And because of where I was in my photography, I was pushing so much to social media, so much. And even now, I'm still addicted to the phone to where I constantly am in contact with my phone. And so she struggled with that. And
not just you. I have friends that are addicted to phones, and I've had to walk away from relationships because it's, you can't, you're never going to be as interesting as someone else's phone. So why put yourself in the situation where you just feel like you're not good enough to be, in a conversation with someone?
Yeah, and it's very difficult. Yeah, that's probably still a struggle that I'm really still dealing with. So, thank you for that response. So you kind of, I think, already, we got little passersby walking through here.
Hi!
She literally has her head through a picket in the picket fence. So I've mentioned it before, and we kind of already have briefly touched it. But this one is where maybe I would want you to reach out to a photographer, or basically any workaholic for that measure. We both work a lot. I think we both truly love what we do. Of course, we still come home and complain about things in work, but what advice would you have for somebody that is a workaholic, that has that struggle of putting that job down and taking a break, taking a step back? Because I think everybody needs to take that step back, even if they truly love what they do.
So I do a lot of mentoring at work, and I've seen lots of examples where people go really, really high up in their career, and their career is everything. And they don't have a spouse and they don't have children. And not that that's the path for everybody, but they don't have hobbies. They don't have that stuff. They only have work. And as much as I'm loyal to my job and I truly believe in what I do, I am replaceable. Somebody else could do my job, but nobody else could be Jason's wife, as amazing as I am. And nobody could be my daughter's mother, or my parents' daughter, and my brother's sisters. And when you try to get all of your self-worth from work, when it ends, you're lost. And that can be anything. If you are, an all-in mom that all you do is everything for your children, and sooner or later they grow up and have their own lives, then you're lost. So I think you just have to have some stuff for yourself. You have to figure out what your passion is. And as I've watched Jason through the years, his passion has changed. And really photography, I guess he's enjoyed things through life, but now I'm actually seeing that photography as his passion. And like, I love my job, but my job isn't my passion. So it's amazing to see that, but I do think you can get burned out, and I think it would be sad to be burned out on your passion. So I do try to get Jason to take breaks, or realize, you work 7 days a week, you work 10 to 12 hours a day, you shoot a couple of hours a day, you're editing a couple hours, a long time a day. You literally never take, an hour off. If you take an hour off, you're like, I gotta edit. I mean, on vacation, he's editing. He's always editing. And I just wouldn't hate for you to start regretting or dreading editing or, photography and stuff.
Yeah, she's talking about giving advice to people on how to step back. And here we are on a trip, and I'm recording this podcast because I need to get it out, right? And so it's one of those things that I probably didn't have to do. I did have a goal at the beginning of the year, so I'm trying to fulfill that goal. And Rachel is fantastic in that she's allowing me to, not allowing me, but she's still providing me with that opportunity without getting onto me for it. Like, hey, you shouldn't even be doing this. I did bring my laptop to edit. Again, she's very, I don't even know, I don't know the word, but she's fantastic in giving me the freedom to be able to do that on this trip. It is a busy time of year for me. But something that she did kind of mention, because I'm trying to think, well, as a photographer, as that single type photographer, nobody can do what you do when you leave the job. And that's true. But really what I kind of got thinking is, oh my gosh, what am I going to do in 10 years or 15 years? And it used to be photography was my hobby, and I had other avenues, but now I don't fully have a hobby. And so I think it's important for photographers to develop something else outside of photography that they can truly enjoy, because when I'm done doing what I'm doing, and we decide, hey, we want to go whatever it is and retire, what am I going to do? How am I going to spend my time? And that kind of is like something that is constantly in the back of my mind. Like, how long can I do what I'm doing? And what am I going to feel in that space after that? Mm-hmm. And I think that it's a little bit scary to me, at least.
But I think photography came naturally out of your progression of life, and whatever comes after it will naturally come. Sure. If you're worried about it, it's not going to change what happens.
Yeah, worrying doesn't do anything. Hey, so this podcast is going to be running a little bit long, but that's okay, because I think it's valuable information. All right, so I have no clue how she's going to answer this one. I kind of had ideas on some of the others, but what is something that you actually do like about living with a photographer?
I don't know. I guess I may have read it quickly and didn't really comprehend it. So you probably think I get tons of free photography, but I do not. You probably think we have amazing family photos, and we do not.
We have beach photos every year.
We do have beach photos. And the funny thing is, Jason looks at it like a job, and it is not relaxing and enjoyable. And he does not see me as the client. He sees some other people in the photos as a client. So when I ask for things, he doesn't do it.
This was supposed to be a good thing.
Oh, my bad. My daughter and I tease that we feel like we're the cobbler's children who don't have shoes, because I graduated a couple of years ago, and I wanted cap and gown photos, and she
doesn't have them.
I do not have them. We had a very long filled weekend for the graduation. All my family went out of town. They came and supported me, and our friends came and supported us. And on the way home, for some reason, we went to an aquarium and we rolled back through town at like 7 p.m. We're exhausted. And Jason's like, oh, let's stop at, Confluence Park and I'll take your photo. And I'm like, I'm not putting my cap and gown on. It's August in San Antonio. I'm hot. And he's like, well, I offered.
Yeah.
So,
the same with my daughter, it was really when I was kind of starting to get rolling and I knew what I was doing. I still blame it on her. It wasn't my fault that she doesn't have cap and gown photos for her high school, but she had braces and she wanted to wait till her braces were off. And so she was supposed to get them off in January, then February, then March. Turns out she didn't get them off until like July or August.
Yeah.
And so we ended up doing her photos then, but it was just more like a modeling session. So my daughter of this senior photographer has no senior photos.
You would think I would get to let all my friends and family get free photo sessions. Jason gets real mad when I'm like, Jason, just do it. It's no big deal. I'm super generous with Jason's time.
Yeah.
He doesn't appreciate that.
So needless to say, there's nothing positive about living with this photographer, at least. I think we have a lot of fun. There is definitely a back and forth. I do hear a lot of that, but I don't know how to answer that.
I don't know if I benefit from the photography. I enjoy watching you love photography.
Okay.
But,
I'll take that one. I'll take that one. So here's one, and she kind of has already talked about it. In the most gentlest way, tell my audience what it's like to be a model for me as the wife. Trust me, I guarantee you, and this is all bad on me. I do not treat my paying clients the same way that I treat my wife client.
Yes, because I have had friends that have had photo shoots with Jason, family sessions or headshots, and they gush over it. They're just like, I feel so relaxed and blah, blah, blah. And I'm like, really? That's concerning to me because I don't enjoy getting yelled at, so I don't understand what you're loving.
It's a yell in love. It's not a yell.
It's the exact concept of Jason trying to teach me to ride a mountain bike. He was riding behind me the whole time, yelling at me to relax my shoulders.
Yeah.
And it didn't feel relaxing
Shift
to
your
be
gears
yelled.
now. Change the gears now.
So it's the same concept. I stand there and Jason's like, don't look like that. Don't put your hands that way. Relax. I told you to relax. This is why I don't take your photo. So I don't enjoy the photos.
So the advice for the photographers is be a little bit more gentler with your spouse. If you're needing help, be a little bit more gentler because they'd probably be more willing to do it. Now, Rachel does get a little bit awkward in front of the camera, so I'm going to throw you under the bus on that one. But it's so funny and it's aggravating all the time. I shoot all these beautiful people all the time, and I post their photos all over social media, and I get very small interaction. The second I take one modeling type shot of Rachel, friends that I haven't spoken to in 20 years that probably don't even have Facebook are out there just gushing all over. And I'm like, where's the interaction with the other stuff that I do? But no, she's fantastic. And I do appreciate you modeling for me, even though it doesn't always work out the best.
I think that is how we've always been. We've always talked about we need a business together and this and that. And as Jason said, or maybe I said it, I'm very business minded. I like that. I'm a little opinionated. I'm kind of type A, take charge of every situation. And so when we are at a photo shoot together, I don't normally go on his photo shoots for whatever reason. There's occasional times that I happen to be there and I'm like, hey, you should do this, you should do that. And he's like, no, I'm a photographer. You're not an artist. You don't know what you're talking about. And I'm like, well, it would just be better if we did it my way.
Yeah.
So we don't work well. So that probably, transfers over when I'm trying to model for you. And
it's funny because Rachel is very intelligent and very knowledgeable about everything. But when it comes to the photography side, when it comes to the modeling side, she is not. And so I think it's difficult for her to lay back and let me take control of that situation. And so I think that's honestly where some of her awkwardness comes in, is because she doesn't fully understand how to give away some of that.
You can't read a book and learn it.
Exactly. So, from that side, relax just a little bit, and maybe I won't be as mean. But I think we've got just one or two more questions to go. Rachel kind of mentioned before, she's more analytical. She's very much financially oriented. Her job is more in financial realm. She kind of helps me when I allow her to help me with the financial side of things of the business to do that. So I just wanted to give Rachel an opportunity, maybe if there's any starting photographer, because photography is expensive. It's actually a lot more expensive than what you might realize starting off. Is there any kind of advice that you would give financially to maybe somebody looking at turning a hobby into a business?
I think if you're looking at it to turn a hobby into a business, you're probably not going to be successful, because you had a hobby that started to become profitable, but you didn't look at it as, I want to make money doing this, because then I think you're always chasing the dollar and you're not figuring out what you love to do. Because I know when you were shooting cars, you really tried to make money doing it, but you couldn't find an audience for it. And then you just slowly came into dance photography because you fell in love with the movement of it. From a business standpoint, I do think it's helpful for somebody like Jason, who's an artist and thinks in a creative way, that you need to be realistic of how much stuff costs. So, we have a budget, and our budget is very loose. It's more tracking than determining how much we're going to spend. But I do know when I, ask him like, hey, is this parking? Is this and that? And he'll tell me yes, and I put it in the budget. And then later on, I'll tell him like how much he spent. And he's like, no, I think I spent about $50 this month. And I'm like, no, you are nowhere near $50. So I think that unrealistic view of how much it costs, you only see how much you make, doesn't help you, realistically plan for how expensive it is. I know there's a lot of good programs out there made for photography and for different kinds of artists to track. I think it's important because the business part isn't important to you, and I think you can get yourself in a lot of trouble if you're always, a light breaks, this breaks, you need a new laptop, and not realize how much stuff costs you before you turn around and you're in credit card debt or something like that.
Yeah, very much so. I think that there are ways to do photography on a budget, and I really tried to do that for the most part, especially as I was growing. And I think it's important to do that, but the money side is always the most hated side to photography to me. I've mentioned that before, and I say it all the time. If I could and still have the gear that I have, I would do it for free because I don't want to deal with the money of it. So just know that photography is way more expensive than what you fully realize. And if it's going to be a hobby and you don't want to really get the good stuff, then you're going to struggle getting good images, I think. But in order to get the better stuff, what I say is you need to be bringing money in the photography side. And so that's a hard give and take, and especially for a creative, I think like what you said, my mind is not business oriented, and I struggle with that. So,
and I think if you're trying to make money in photography, then you have to take jobs you may not enjoy, and you're not getting to use your creativity. And Jason was in the military 20 years and he has a retirement, and I have a good job, and he also has a good job outside of photography. So he's allowed to say no when people ask, do you do this type of photography or that type? And if he's dreading it, he can say no. Where if he only is focused on the money, he has to do it, then he's starting to dread his photography, and that's where it becomes a drain instead of a fun business. So as much as I do 100% think it's a business, I think it helps that you see it as a hobby because it's still something you want to do.
Yeah. Well, awesome. Thank you so much. Hopefully you've stuck around to the end. Rachel is full of knowledge bombs. I really do appreciate you for coming on. Something that we've been milling back and forth for the better part of a year and a half is just doing a podcast just of us. and I don't know if that's going to happen or not. I'm still trying to figure out what would be episode 2. The introduction is always going to be easy, but where do we go from there? So who knows? But again, thank you for, one, allowing me to do this on this little trip. And allowing is not the right term, but thanks for doing this with me. And thanks for joining me in this journey of whatever it is. And I really do appreciate it. Thank you so much for listening. Remember, I've got new videos that come out every Wednesday, new podcast every Tuesday. Be sure to subscribe to the channel and follow me on Instagram. It's j.allen_photographer. And until next time, keep shooting.